So welcome to the the ungrand premiere of Elevate and Celebrate Amplified. I'm your host, Alex Dumas, Vice President of the BIPOC Coach Collective. And Elevate and Amplified is an offshoot, is my brainchild for our existing monthly show called Elevate and Celebrate Amplified. Now it's going to be this beautiful condensed version of introducing our guests, learning their narrative, learning who they are, and also you as a audience member, as you as an attendee, a participant, walking away with one, maybe two tangible things that you can apply to your coaching practice, to your business, to your mindset, your resilience, all these different things that matter, right? These are all the ingredients of success of making it happen, especially for us as coaches of color. Super important. So I wanted to invite experts and thought leaders and obviously successful coaches who have something to share, a story to tell, and what better way to start off with the amazing Nice Tiger, Judy Tsuei. Welcome to Amplified Experience.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much. I love part two. So here we are again. And I will just give a quick summary because I don't think everybody could hear it the last time. Yeah, so I own a marketing agency, a branding and marketing agency called Nice Tiger. We focus on working with niche brands to uncage your brand's potential. And so I've been doing branding and marketing for a couple of decades. And as I've been doing that, I've realized that I love working with people who are voices of color because we have different like baggage, burden, things that kind of systemically, societally, culturally hold us back. And to be able to move through that. And if you want to build a personal brand, I became a neuro-linguistic programming coach. And what I realized is so many of us have so much baggage. So one of the things that I said in our last round on StreamYard was that when you're wanting to build a personal brand, you really got to show up and show out. And I think if you come from, like for me, I grew up with immigrant parents who had trauma from fleeing their countries of origin, which then gets passed down. And so we do things that make us feel safe or that we are told to feel safe. Specifically for Asian Americans, I think a lot of us have been told, like, well, if you just align yourself to whiteness, then that'll make you feel safe. And I went all the way to marrying a white man and having a half and half child and realizing at some point, like, wait a minute, that actually didn't work. And so now I've had to backtrack and figure out like, well, what's important to me? What actually matters? How do I create a business and a life that I love, especially when it potentially flies in the face of a lot of what I've been told is a marker of success. I didn't become a doctor, a lawyer, engineer. I became a writer and at one point a yoga teacher. And so my podcast is called Fuck Saving Face. It's all about breaking through taboo topics. It's being able to talk about the things that are hard to talk about, and especially being able to have a resource to see all of these other amazing people who've built lives that are non-traditional. And how do they thrive and how do they survive? And then how do they reconcile with the parents' expectations, with the families that they came from, with the culture that they came from? And a lot of NLP is all about breaking baggage. This is one of my favorite things that I like to show for NLP because people don't really understand. So neurolinguistic programming works with your unconscious mind. Your unconscious mind powers everything in your life. If you've got things that are stuck here, it can be really hard to see and create the life that you love. So in a lot of communities that in a lot of Eastern cultures, actually, something happens in our life. And then we're like, okay, something happened. You know, I have an opportunity to potentially process it and then let it all go. When you grow up in the US and in Western cultures, something happens, a small lowercase t trauma, a big uppercase T trauma, something happens, and we're like, I don't really want to deal with that. No, I don't have the tools to deal with it. I don't want to deal. So you just keep like shoving more and more things like in, and more things happen. And so what starts as like this little thing, this little trauma that happens here, you stick it in your bag, and then this bag, you just keep shoving things in it. And so then this bag starts to grow. And at some point, your baggage becomes this.
Oh,
And it
jeez.
becomes a giant pack like this that you then actually, instead of putting down, like I was able to put this down, this you start holding in front of us. And we're like, okay, well, this is me. This is how I identify. This is like my story. This is everything that's happened to me. And so NLP removes this really quickly, actually. And then that way you get to be coached to the core of who you are. You get to show up authentically as who you are in the world. And that's how you create things that are so much more aligned and so much more frictionless as you move through the world.
Oof. Wonderful description. Thank you for sharing that. And the question that pops into my mind, right? I've always like to go to the extreme is like walk me through somebody who had one of these moments, right? Of like real
Hmm.
resistant, like, Judy, you
Hmm.
understand, this is my, right? You said it,
Hmm.
my
Hmm.
identity. This is who I am. These
Hmm.
things that have happened to me, the
Hmm.
whatever situations they've been through, I'm not letting
Hmm.
go, right?
Hmm.
Walk me through what it's like working with that kind of person and what kind of transformation they've experienced. If you have a
Yeah.
specific client example, obviously confidentiality would be
Yes. Oh, no. I mean, I was that person for a long time. I developed an eating disorder when I was 17 because I was dealing with the chaos in my life and my family. I'm the eldest of four. Had to navigate all of these things for my immigrant parents and help take care of my three younger children. And I had all this anger, and I don't think that a lot of us are taught how to deal with anger and resentment and rage. And so we just swallow it and like, just handle it and deal with it, and then it can kind of come out sideways. And so because of that, I had all of these stories. I mean, I had this eating disorder for like 20 something years, on and off in different variations, and traveled all the way to the other side of the world. I ran away to China to become an editor at a magazine, and then realized, holy shit, I made it to the other side of the world and I'm still dealing with this. Like,
Mhm.
there's no running away. And so I came back, and it took me a year in this intensive outpatient program, watching everybody else around me process and cry and move through the things. I would not let it go. And then finally, at some point, I was working at this company that their main product is weight loss products. So the universe has a very funny sense of humor with me. It's like, whatever it is that you need to heal, I'm going to just put it right front and center. So I had to call all of these people all day, every day, who were my age. They were under the age of 30 at the time. I think I was 26, and hear about how amazing their lives were from taking these products, from like, investing in this
Wow.
business, like all that kind of stuff. And I tend to be, prior to all of my internal work, I was very much a procrastinator. And so like I saved all of those interviews for like one day. So I'm interviewing and back to back, just hearing all of these things. And then I went to this intensive outpatient program, which, by the way, was around the corner from my full time job. So again, the universe, very funny sense of humor. And I went to this process group. And the second that I open up my mouth, I like, we were doing art therapy, I think. And because it's such a creative way of accessing your emotions, I just immediately started like bawling. And everybody in the room stopped because they had known me for a year and known that like I didn't do any of that. And it took me that long to be able to like get to the heart of what I was feeling and like the grief that I was feeling for this life that I feel like I didn't have because of all of the things that I had been carrying. So I full on know what that's like. And when I became a yoga teacher, I watched transformations happen in the class that I would teach, from the start of class to the end of class. And what people need is a safe space. They need a safe space to not be pressured to, go somewhere that they don't want to go when they're not ready to go there. I also became a Reiki master. So like I did all of this like energetic healing too. And like, I don't know anywhere else in our adult lives where you get to be in a room with somebody else. You don't have to talk about anything, that you can be fully clothed. So it's not like a massage where you're naked and you're vulnerable, you're fully clothed, and someone else is just sending you positive energy. They're just helping you heal. And so watching the transformation and the healing that happened from having a safe space is so remarkable. And it just starts from there. The other thing about NLP that's really awesome is I actually don't need to know all of the stories. I don't need to know how you identify with what. All I'm asking you is to trust your unconscious mind to figure out the earliest root cause of this emotion. We help you release all of these huge emotions. It always starts with anger. That's the first one that we always release. And then it goes sequentially in order to release sadness, hurt, shame, guilt, all of these things. I actually don't need to know. Like, I just ask you, can you figure out the earliest event? And then your unconscious mind figures it out, and then we do this timeline work that is so fast. And like, people walk out of these breakthrough sessions and they're like, oh my God, like just completely where I'll give you an example. One of my clients, she was very triggered by her C-level executive, and she worked closely with him. She was the next in command. But this person reminded her of the authority figure of her father. And she's like, my intellectual mind understands I am a strong, accomplished woman. I know why this is happening. I should not be feeling like this. And yet I still feel like this. So we did this breakthrough session. We released all of these like emotions and all these things on her timeline. Immediately her husband's like, something's changed. And then the very next time she went and talked to the CEO, no emotion whatsoever, no charge. And she's like, I can't even describe to you how profound that shift is. Like, and so that's what I see a lot with the clients who I work with.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And it's definitely one of those things I resonate. My parents immigrated from Haiti, so there's go to school, get a job, get
Mm-hmm.
married, die.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's the
Mm.
blueprint. That's really the blueprint.
Yes.
That's the game plan. And there's always the pressure of like, hey, like how come your grades aren't as good as like I'm the youngest of four, so my
Yeah,
brother's like, how come
totally.
you can't be like your brother, or how come you're more like this brother, and how come you
Yeah.
like, well, can I just be me? Like
Yeah.
there is this kind of good thing that's about me, but maybe not. Or at least that's how I start to see the
Yeah.
world anyway. Yeah, I think that's a very relevant thing for the folks in our community, wherever background they
Mm-hmm.
have, whether they, you know, wherever you're coming from, right? Just that, you said it, that inherent cultural pressure outside of the
Mm-hmm.
Western, be
Yes.
number one, got to be great.
Yeah.
If you're first, you're last kind of thing. Like I'm making fun of it, but like that's the real
Yeah.
unspoken weight, the invisible weight that's
Oh,
on people.
totally.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me about this podcast. I love. I think that's the thing that drew me to you. I was like, who is this lady with this podcast name? Like, excuse me, like clutching my pearls. Like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this.
It's I know it's funny because doing branding and marketing, a lot of people were like, "Are you sure you want to put a curse word in there? It's going to be really hard for you to like find sponsors or like, anything like that because people aren't going to want to share it in a corporate environment since like it has that curse word." Actually had one guest who, she's a very notable person, but she wouldn't share it on her platform because it didn't align with her brand. And so I knew I was taking a risk, yeah, by doing that. But at the same time, like I know it captures your attention. And if you are my target market, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, this idea of like saving face. And for a lot of us, like shame is the number one thing that we have to grapple with, the shame of disappointing our parents or the generations before us. One of my guests, she's a therapist. She was like, she went viral on the Huffington Post. And like at the end of our interview, because I always ask like every guest, what would you say fuck saving face about? She like pulled down her lip right here and it had like fuck like written like in there. And apparently, I have a lot of tattoos, and I know like this place is like the most painful place that you could possibly get a tattoo because your mouth heals so fast. You got
Yeah.
to go real deep. But it's all about talking about the topics that we didn't talk about in our families of origin and the things that are so important, like sex, pleasure, body ownership. Like that's really important.
La,
And
la, la,
then
la, la.
I know exactly. Like my parents could not sign like the sex education waiver fast enough when I was in school. They're like, no, and then like relationships. I mean, I watched my parents fight like it was World War III all of the time. So I did not have a good model for how to deal with conflict and conflict resolution. I bring on a lot of different people who are from like, the therapeutic field. But in addition to that, I brought on chefs, politicians, people who, other coaches, people who've paved a very uh, untraditional life and been able to make something wonderful from it that is hard and different, and just the lessons that they've learned. And I think we get to see so much of ourselves in those stories, but we also get to be inspired by somebody who might say the one thing that you need to hear right then and there, or just to know that like it's all ups and downs. I think to break through the highlight reel that we see on social media a lot. One of the other women, she wrote a book called Cancel the Filter, and she's like, I'm a therapist, I'm a professional, I'm also a mom, and I will tell you, I don't have my shit together a lot of the time. Like, it's like, so I think and even like drugs, like I grew up in the era of say no to drugs, like the drug abuse resistance education
Yeah, yeah,
program.
yeah.
Like,
Good
yeah,
old dare. Yeah.
Dara, and watching like the fried egg in the pan and like this is what your
Yeah.
brain does on drugs and stuff.
Yeah.
And now like there are people who are using, like one of the doctors that I talked to does ketamine therapy, and he's like the shifts in people who suffer from really big trauma, like
Yeah.
or people who have done like ayahuasca, DMT, like all of these other consciousness accessing things, just things that we just don't talk about. So I think that those are all super important. One of my favorites was this guy, Rahi Chun. He's actually used to be an actor. It was funny. I've watched a bunch of shows where all of a sudden I'm like, hey, it's Rahi. Yogi. But like his dad was like in the Korean military, way high up. And
Right.
so he, being an actor was already a huge slap in the face. Then on top of that, he decided to be like not a sex therapist, but something along those lines.
Okay.
And, like that was like next level. So like watching all of that, all the stories are just so amazing.
Yeah, I'm kind of picturing that with your family, right? You're supposed to be an engineer, a doctor, or a lawyer, Judy. What are you
Yeah.
gonna be? I'm gonna be a yogi.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
like, excuse me? Like,
Exactly.
and right, and I'm just gonna assume, right? They might have to go to like, well, we didn't pay for you to go to school and do all
Mhm.
this. And like, yeah, they could be upset. I get it, but like, if it's not in your heart, then
Well, I
then
mean,
why follow? Why pretend?
yes. So I just did a successful Kickstarter for the book that I'm writing now, and it's called How to Disappoint Your Parents in 10 Shameless Steps, a modern Asian American guide. And
Wait,
I've
wait,
set
wait,
this
see
set
that?
up, they're like,
Wait,
yeah,
hold on, see that? Wait, see that? Okay.
yeah, How to Disappoint Your Parents in 10 Shameless Steps. um, and people have told me they're like, it's not just Asian. I grew up with really religious parents. Like that was like the same, or I
Mm,
came out and like that, And so one of the things for me was I chose to get pregnant before I got married. Then I chose to get divorced. And those things fly in the face of, yeah,
mm.
like my family of
Dude,
origin. Yeah.
you are trouble. Like
So
you're not a
I
nice
know,
tiger.
right?
You're like,
I know.
mm,
Exactly. And so all of it, like, I wanted the title to like catch your attention, but ultimately it's how do I reconcile this life that I know is aligned for me and to have understanding, empathy, compassion for my parents and what they went through and what limited resources they had when they were dealing with all of their stuff. And they're still like they've come a long way and I've met them a long like way. So we're like in a good place. And again, NLP helped like profoundly change my relationship with my parents in 15 minutes. Like the exercise that I did, I could not I had no idea that that was going to be the outcome. And my partners watched me like internally lose my shit when my mom's like, why haven't you bought a house yet? And like all of these other things. And then for me to finish this like 15-minute exercise and be like, you know what? I really love my parents. He's like, who are we talking
mm,
about right now? Like, what is going on? And so ultimately, it's like, how do you reconcile that? How do you um, honor where you came from and the legacy and the culture? How do you heal intergenerational trauma? How do you raise a child with like a different set of values, but understanding their values might be different from yours? And just how do you be human ultimately at the end of the day? And how do you like create a life that you love?
yeah. How do we be human? Create a life we love. I love that. Appreciate
Mm-hmm.
that. For our audience as we get close to wrapping up, right? Our coaches, if there's somebody in our community, our collective who's having these feelings like, you know what, I'm supposed to be. I should have been doing this. I've got family tensions and resistance. What's something that might be useful for them to consider redirecting that or just writing a new
Mm-hmm.
narrative for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because in my family, like you're the youngest of four, I'm the eldest of four. So we have siblings that have been
Right.
raised in the similar environment. And yeah, I bet your siblings are different from you. And
Oh
like
yeah.
the way that they process through the childhoods that we came from is different. And so I get to watch the way that I've done it. And then I get to watch what I was told was the right way to do it. And then I get to watch and see like what is the level of health and contentment and satisfaction in our lives. And so I think one of the things that's super important is to be able to first understand your values. Like in the in the recording that got cut off, when I do a breakthrough session with a client, we do it 2 days back to back. So the first day is like just getting your deep personal history focused on one key area of your life, and you dump out all of these things to identify the greater problem. Once you do that, we do a values elicitation. And the reason that this is important is because, you know, how often do you actually look at what your core values are? This is something that we adopt in our brains between the ages of 0 to 7. We learn like what's really important. And then as we continue to grow up in our societies and our cultures and whatnot, we're continually told like this is a value, this is what's important. But to be able to do that reflective exercise on your own, like that's a big deal. So I take you through it and figure out what your values are. And then we do it again on the second day after we've cleared out all your baggage, after we get to figure out who you are at your core. Inevitably, your values shift in order, and then words appear that did not appear the first day. And these words are like your top values that you didn't even have conscious awareness of is here. Those values drive all of your behavior. So unless they're in your top 5 or 6 values, you actually won't take action on it. And so in our last talk, I said like a lot of people talk about how much money they want to make. And so that's usually coming from our Western culture where like money is God and like, you know, like if you're wealthy, then that's a thing. It also comes from if you have immigrant parents, like making money, having that stability and safety was really important. Is money of value to you? Like, is that actually important to you? On the second day, we figure out like where that value falls after you've cleared out all your stuff. And we can move values. Like if you have goals you want to achieve, and let's say achieving like 7 or 8 figures is your goal, we will move the value higher up in your list. But you'll also be able to see like what are the things that I actually care about. And so your unconscious mind is the goal setter, your conscious mind is the goal getter. Your unconscious mind is setting goals based on these values that you have here. Your conscious mind, you can tell your conscious mind all day, every day about all the things that you want to do, but it won't do it like it won't create the results that you want to see unless you figured this stuff out. And so I think for a lot of us who come from these families and dealing with this, being clear on what your values are at least gives you the foundational structure to know where you stand. And it at least gives you the clarity of like, this is the ground upon which my life is built. And this is what's important to me. And then once you have that, you can say, like, okay, so I'm going to build an unshakable identity or life based on this. This doesn't mean that these values are what everybody else is going to live by. Everybody else has their own values. And so in NLP, we also say you have to honor and respect somebody else's model of the world. Their model of the world is going to be different from your model of the world. And to try to like wrench and get like, you know, all of that, it's not going to work. Can you be solid in your house and honor and respect like theirs? And that's really important to be able to do because the more work that you do on yourself, like I used to always say this, the more that I healed myself, the more that the life around me inevitably shifted because I was no longer playing that same role that everybody else had expected or gotten used to me playing. So just by pure physics and logic, like that relationship had to change. And so I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's understanding what your model of the world is. And also, when I was a yoga teacher, I was able to work for this magazine and I got to interview all of the spiritual luminaries that like you probably recognize, like all these big names. I got to spend time with them and ask them, watch behind the scenes, see how many
Yeah.
of them are very human. Everybody's human, but also be able to learn that for however many people there are on this planet, that is how many paths to enlightenment there are. There is not one path that we are all supposed to follow. We are supposed to follow the path that was destined for us. And so, from the beginning of time ever after, there will never ever be another you. So, I always tell people to be wildly you. Be you, pursue your path towards enlightenment, and then understand other people's models of the world.
See, I know there's a reason why I invited you to be on the show. I love these different shades of vibe. We've had the jokes, the fun, and then also
Yeah.
the grounded, anchored work backed with spirituality, whatever God, universe, spirit source, whatever you want to call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
As that foundation vessel. So, Judy, I want to just let you know how much I appreciate you, the work that you do,
Mm.
and for anyone who would love to connect with you, whether it's on LinkedIn, offline, like where do we find you? How do we become part of the Judy Sway fan club? I'm waiting for
Yeah,
my
you can
t-shirt.
go
I'm waiting for
to,
my tiger
thank you.
t-shirt. Get some tiger
You can
t-shirts.
go. If you want to learn about the coaching and the personal branding, you can go to judytsuei.com. And so it's TSUEI. It's a lot of vowels in a row. You'll be able to see that. And then if you want to learn more about our branding and marketing, you can go to nicetiger.com. I'm very active on LinkedIn under my name, and I talk a lot about being a divorced mom on my Instagram. So you can see that. And also for all of the followers here and like the people in your community, I want to offer like a unique code. So I've been putting a lot of products in my shop on judytsuei.com, and I'll give you the link and I will give you a coupon code so that people can go in there and they can use it and apply it towards either these meditations that are rooted in NLP. So they're designed to like scramble your conscious mind so your unconscious mind can like clear out all the baggage essentially. They're really quick. They're like 2 minutes, 5 minutes. You can do that. Or I have marketing resources there. So there's an evergreen marketing plan to make a profitable business for 2025. There's 365 days of prompts, and there's like a whole content calendar. So like I will give you a code that you can go apply and you can use it however you see fit.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Judy. Appreciate you. Thank you for the tools. We love goodies. I love this. Tis the season
Yeah.
to be jolly and give and be
Yes.
merry and all that stuff.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
So all that said and done, I want to leave you just like, what's a final thought, final thing you want to share with the world if you couldn't share another thing with anybody? Not not calling it
Yeah.
out there. So big guy,
Okay.
Judy's here to say, but right?
Yeah. I
What
mean,
would
I
that thing be?
I ask my guests all the time on my podcast, like if you could say fuck saving face about something, what would you say it about? And I would have to say that my daughter is the best. Her name is Wilder. Her middle name is Love. So I always say that she teaches me how to
Oh,
love more wildly. And the divorce was tough and it was messy and the aftermath was messy and that it's not the end of the story. So I know it's the holidays. It can be a difficult time. There's a lot of people going through tough times right now. It's not the end of the story. And if I could like impart something, seeing how many kids have lost their lives by choice or whatnot recently because of COVID and like all the aftermath effect. Someone had said to me, like, that's so sad because they just haven't been enough times around the sun to know that it's going to get better and that it's going to get okay. And I know when you're in that depressed state, you like think thoughts that you just normally wouldn't think. And so I just want people to know that they are not alone and that this isn't the end of the story. There's so much of the narrative left to be written, so many chapters of the book. And so if we can just pull out a little bit and see that this is just one chapter in a long story, that you're going to have at the end of your life, like the best story that only you could have told. And so I hope that people remember that.
that's it. Love that. Yeah. Please stick around if you have something in your heart that troubling you.
Yeah,
Reach out. You have a community here.
yeah,
Hopefully somebody in this collective or even outside of it you can talk to and
yeah,
just be yourself. And I think it's the whole premise of like why I'm doing this, why me and the
mhm,
leadership team, why we've created this collective so people can just be themselves, be who they are. Because
mhm,
if we can't do that,
mhm.
then what's life for anyway? If you can't
Yeah,
be
yeah,
who you are and whether people accept it or not, apologetic, we can
yeah,
forget saving face, right? I'm gonna be PG
yeah.
because that's me. But right, but be
Yeah.
yourself
Thank you.
and make a difference, right? So
Thank you so much. It's been so fun.
yeah, that's what I do. I bring the fun wherever I go.
I
So
love it.
for everyone watching, I don't know when the next time I'll do an amplified thing is, but I'll work up the tech stuff in the background. So anybody who was watching on StreamYard and was like, I can't hear you. Apologies. Hopefully this makes up for it and is even better than the first thing we were working on. So until
Yeah.
then, uh, at least here in the States, the Western United States, happy holidays, right? Keep it, PC and happy 2025. I'll see you guys next year. Gotta drop one at least, one dad joke at least. See you next year. Why not? But thank you, Judy. Till next time.
Thank you. Thank you.